Just 3 years before the Indian Act was created, the NWMP, Northwest Mounted Police, were created to advance the agenda of a newly established Dominion of Canada, which basically means that they were created to stop any opposition to the creation of a colonial state. In the book An Unauthorized History of the RCMP, authors Brown and Brown wrote the NWMP was designed to keep order in the Northwest, to control the Aboriginal and Métis populations, and to facilitate the transfer of Indigenous territory to the federal government with minimal bloodshed, in theory. The NWMP, eventually renamed the RCMP, forced all Indigenous Canadians onto reserves when the Indian Act was in full swing. And once Indigenous people were on reserves, they were responsible with enforcing the part of the Indian Act that restricted Indigenous Canadians from leaving reserves without an Indian agent. An Indian agent was essentially like a conservator in a conservatorship, as Indian people were legally wards of the state. They were responsible with overseeing band council meetings and elections. They made decisions regarding band members' access to relief, housing, property, or loans. They ensured children went to residential schools. They enforced bans on First Nations ceremonies, managed the estates of deceased band members, enforced the ban from butchering cattle, even in times of hunger, like I was talking about earlier, and enforced the ban on selling beef, grain, hay, or timber without permission. Essentially, reserves began to resemble prisons, and the Indian agents were the wardens. Testimony from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Canadian Women and Girls, published on June 3rd in 2019, highlights testimony from people who have lived through that part of the system. Randy C. said, "I think about the early stories from the time when my gran said chiefs were dragged out of their homes and thrown on the ground and forced to shovel like pig shit and stuff like that, and beat, and the RCMP were just standing around every day waiting for them to even say..."